Welcome to our webinar, Estate Planning Part 2. Having that honest conversation with your loved ones about your wishes. Welcome, Patelco members and friends. Next slide. Hello, I'm Chris Raffanan, Manager of Investments for Patelco Financial Solutions, and welcome to Part 2 of our Estate Planning webinar series. Next slide. First things first, I want to show you this important disclosure on what we sometimes call the not may. In short, investment products are not FDIC or NCUA insured. They are not guaranteed by the credit union and may lose value. Next slide. Before we get started with the main presentation, let's go over a few housekeeping items. All participants will be in listen-only mode. There is a lot of heavy content tonight, but we want you to sit back and relax. That's why this webinar is being recorded and the replay will be sent to you in about 2 to 3 days. Our main speaker, Frank Pollaro, will present for about 30 minutes, after which we will begin the question and answer session. We encourage you to type your questions in the Q&A section as you think of them and at any time during the presentation. Please use Q&A instead of the chat so we can keep an eye on those important questions. Also, at the end of the webinar, we will show you our digital solution for estate planning for those do-it-yourself people, as well as an investment promotion where you can invest $250,000 and more and receive a $100 Amazon e-card. 2 weeks ago, we hosted a webinar titled Estate Planning, Part 1, The Basics. We learned a lot about wills, trusts, powers of attorney, and many other things. You can find the replay of Part 1 on our website, patelco.org/financial wellness tab. Tonight, we have Estate Planning Part 2, which is a deep dive on having that honest conversation with your loved ones about your wishes. We are going to explore identifying caretakers for loved ones, creating and storing important documents, selecting decision makers, setting up account access. Our partner for tonight's webinar is Equitable. We work very closely with Equitable, and tonight they have brought us some unique content for this webinar. Let me read our speaker, Frank Pollaro's bio. Frank has 24 years of experience in the industry and 20 years with Equitable. He grew up in New Jersey, one of 4 children. Both his parents were inner-city school teachers. On Frank's bucket list is to drive the Autobahn, attend the Super Bowl with the Giants playing, and bring his 2 daughters to see all 62 national parks. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Frank to start the presentation.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate everyone's time. This is a great presentation that we have. Share Your Love is one of my favorite ones. I do about 50 of these a year and travel all over the Bay Area, educating clients on the value and the benefits of really having that honest conversation with your loved ones. As Chris mentioned, my name is Frank Pollaro. I do work with Equitable. I'm the insurance specialist in the Northern California Bay Area. And we try to bring these value-added presentations to all of our members, clients out there, because we feel that those discussions are needed inside the industry. I have one of these Share Your Love brochures. I fill one out. My wife and I, Jamie, we think it's very important to do a lot of financial planning in our world. As Chris said, I have 2 daughters. My 9-year-old is named Carly, and my 5-year-old is named Reagan. And I always say to my wife, if something should happen to me, and I somehow don't come home at night, can you run the household? Can you make those decisions needed on an everyday basis to raise our daughters? Do you know where the will is? Do you know where the trust is? Do you know where the bank account is? Do you know where the assets are? Do you have the code to my 401k? And can you reach my benefits? Do you know how to run a household? As many of us out there are, sometimes we share responsibilities in a house, and sometimes one person handles it. But finance is something that everyone needs to take an honest part in. If you could see this, this is the Share Your Love brochure. And we're going to go over this today. We're going to go over the importance of this brochure. We're going to talk about how to fill it out. And what I want you to think about is this. Organizing your finances is hard for so many people. It was hard for my mother, it was hard for my father, and we had to have that discussion with them. As they started aging, someone needed to take care of their finances. And this brochure is a great way for you to sit down, organize your assets, think about the assets that you have, and start to open up that conversation with your family. And in addition, it does something else that's very important. It helps you to engage your financial advisor. It helps you to start that planning conversation. And in addition to that, if you haven't met with an estate planner yet, or a tax professional, or a trust attorney, that conversation can be overwhelming for so many of us. But what that brochure does is it sparks that light. It makes us think about the conversations and the questions that we might have. So what I want to do today, I'm going to ask of this. I'm going to ask everyone to please take a look at this brochure as we go through it, as we talk about the importance of the brochure, we talk about the different parts, we talk about estate planning. We're going to make this fun. We're going to make this easy. We're going to go through it. And I promise you this, it's going to be something that's going to be useful in your life. Because when I first moved out to Northern California, I was tasked with the job of traveling the Bay Area, and I had nowhere to go. I didn't know how to get around the Bay Area at all. And back then, 17 years ago, I had a map. And it was my map that took me around the Bay Area. And then a couple years later, I had a TomTom, and we went digital with all our navigation. And then fast forward a few years, we had an iPhone, and now the world is mapped, and I can pull up any location. And I knew where to go. And I'm going to challenge this. I know a lot of people out there that when they do their financial planning, it's just like a map that you're going to have through retirement. Most people retire at age 65, and life expectancy is 95. You would never travel through Northern California to go on vacation without a map. Do not travel through retirement without a financial plan. You need that map, because sometimes retirement turns, it goes left, it goes right, there's a detour, something happens. And it's really important to have these discussions, know where your assets are, work with a financial advisor to put together that financial plan, have an estate plan, and introduce your beneficiaries to your financial advisor. It's one of the most important things you can do, because if anything happens to you, your beneficiaries, your loved ones are going to want to meet with your financial advisor and have the discussion about the assets that you've saved throughout your life. You know, my father was 75 years old and out of nowhere was diagnosed with ALS. And it really hit our family pretty hard. I remember him going to the doctor after years and years of wondering why he was losing muscle mass and why he was shaking. And the doctor said, you know, you have ALS, and gave him a brochure and talked to him about how to plan out the next 2 years of his life. Because 80% of the people that have ALS pass away in the first 6 months. And it was gut-wrenching for our family to have to go through that. My mother thought that she'd have her father for at least another 10 years. But what we learned from that is we learned how to pull together as a family. We learned how to strengthen ourselves through planning to help each other get through that. And my father, I'll never forget my father said, he goes, Frank, I don't have enough time. You know, when life makes that left-hand turn and you go down that detour, and maybe you hit construction on your way through retirement and something happens. The reason why we do these presentations is because we don't want you to spend the last years of your life planning. We want you to spend the last years of your life with your family. We think it's so important that you do that. So Carolyn, next slide, please. Important notes, and this is the agenda for today. We're going to talk about the importance of estate planning. It's really important to know that we are not estate planners, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some really great ideas so that when you do talk to that legal professional, you're going to have information that you can share with them. The second thing is we're going to talk about the Share Your Love discussion guide. I think it's really important that when you organize your financial future, you have all your information in one place. And then the third thing we're going to talk about is what do you do when you complete the guide? You know, where do you put it? It's important that we put it somewhere that's safe. Next slide, Carolyn. Okay, the importance of estate planning. You know, it's all about controlling the assets and the distribution of your assets. There's so many people out there that They work their whole lives. They raise assets. This is the San Francisco Bay Area. There's a ton of wealth that was generated, and there's a ton of rental properties out there. I'm sure that when you pass those assets on, you're going to want to pass them on to a loved one. The second most important thing, and I experienced this firsthand with my father, was you want to prepare ahead of time. You want to be there for the loved ones, and you want to make sure that when you have that left-hand turn and you're faced with a life decision and your timeline is shortened, you want to spend the rest of your life not preparing, but you want to spend the rest of your life being with your loved ones. And then the last thing is very important too. We want to avoid the family conflict. You want to protect your family members. Over doing these presentations over the Bay Area for the last couple of years, clients come up to me afterwards and they always say, Frank, I can't believe it. My father, my mother passed away, my uncle passed away, and there was a dispute over the assets. My brothers and sisters right now were fighting over everything. It tore our family apart. And doing a proper estate plan is a way for you to protect your loved ones. When money's involved, it changes people. And it can be the slightest, smallest amount of money, but it changes people. And when you do a proper estate plan and you're controlling the distribution of your assets and you're planning ahead of time, you're making sure that your loved ones aren't fighting over your estate. Next slide, please. So there's two important parts of an estate plan. First of all, is you want to have to start the conversation. And this is the most important part. This is where I urge you to meet with your estate planner, talk to your financial advisor, start gathering all the assets that you have, and start talking to your loved ones about what's important to them and what they're going to receive down the road. If you're anything like my mother, 75 years old and Italian, this was very hard for her to discuss the conversation of her assets because she's very superstitious. Every time you talk to her, she goes, is this what you want? You'd rather have your assets than me in your life? And we always joke around. No, Mom, we love you. We want you to be there. We're just planning ahead of time. It's important that we plan ahead of time. The second thing is you want to talk about the completion of the relevant documents. What are all the documents that go into an estate plan? And we're going to uncover that in a little bit. Next slide, please. How many people out there remember Prince? Prince was a rock legend. He was absolutely amazing, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a few years ago. But the reason why we bring up Prince is because he's your typical example of everything that went wrong in estate planning. He had a $300 million estate. He was famous. Everyone knew who he was. He didn't have an estate plan. He didn't have a will. He didn't have any of the necessary documents needed to plan. I always say, when you have $300 million and you do no planning for estate planning at all, that's when you truly live the rock star lifestyle. In fact, his family was fighting over the estate. It was tied up in litigation for years. Millions of dollars were spent on attorneys and legal fees. And the most important thing that I can take from this is this. An inmate came out and said, I am Prince's legal heir, and I'm entitled to some of that money. So to make a long story short, Prince did not avoid family conflicts. He didn't facilitate the timely distribution of his estate. It took years and was caught up in arbitration and legal battles. And he didn't maximize the assets according to his wishes. He paid millions of dollars in legal fees. Next slide, please. Our next example is FloJo, Florence Griffin Joyner. She was an Olympic athlete, passed away at 38 years old. Did everything right, put together the estate plan, had all the information going, but never documented where her estate plan was. And when she had passed away, didn't recover any of the assets. So she did not provide confidence that her assets will be distributed according to her wishes. She didn't promote a healthy lifestyle with passing assets on, and she didn't reassure her loved ones that they knew how to carry out her wishes in addition to that. Next slide, please. So what's the purpose of the Share Your Love discussion guide? I always tell my wife, Jamie, and we sat down and we put together our own, and we said, you know what? This is going to put our mind at ease. It's going to lessen the burden if anything should happen to you. Who knows where your assets are, what your wishes are, and how to take care of all the estate planning, right? This is discussing and writing down a plan with your loved ones to ensure nothing is left behind, right? You're going to save your loved ones from searching for important documents. You're going to ensure that your wishes are carried out. I can't tell you, one time I did this presentation for a financial advisor in Oakland. We had 100 clients there, and afterwards, the client came up to me and said, Frank, this is some of the most important information you can share. My mother had passed away from cancer. She was on hospice for about 8 months. And it was $8,000 that we paid every month, my brother and I, for additional care to help her during that time. When she finally passed away, we went through all of her assets. We were in her room. We uncovered keys to a safety deposit box. We went to the bank. We opened up the safety deposit box. We found jewelry. We found important documents. The most important document we found was my father, who had passed away 10 years prior. He had a disability policy for her. We didn't know about it. We didn't claim it. But at that time of financial need for my brother and I, who were taking care of my mother, we could have used that policy. So the most important thing that we can take away from this is, think about this. Do you know where all the relevant documents are for the estate plan? This is going to really help you get it organized. Next slide, please. The brochure is broken up into 4 parts. The first part is the key contact and advisor section. The second part is the financial information and assets section. The third part is the important documents regarding information and arrangements. And the fourth part is the ethical will. I think in the chat, there's a link to the brochure. You can pull it up and we can go through it together as we go through this part. The brochure is long. It's about, I want to say about 30, 40 pages. Now, it's very detailed. It's very detailed. It has a lot of information in it. It has everything from 401ks to your spouse's information, all the way down to veterans benefits and disability benefits. But I will say this. If you're not a veteran, you don't have to fill out the section for the veterans benefits. If you don't have retirement assets, like a 401k or an IRA, you don't have to fill out that section. So I'll tell you how my wife and I filled out our brochure, because it was a great lesson for us. It brought us together. It was time that we spent together, and it helped us to organize ourselves. But here's what we did. We took the brochure and we opened a bottle of wine. And every Saturday night, we'd sit down and we'd go through the brochure and we'd take a couple pages on a Friday or Saturday night with a glass of wine. And we'd go through, we'd fill out the parts that were important to us. Now, it took us about a month because we didn't stress it. We didn't do a lot of it. We just went through it casually. And it took us about 4 bottles of wine, which is great. So it was 4 weeks that we really spent together, hanging out on the couch, drinking, filling out this brochure, just having a great time and reflecting on everything that we've done. The first section I am going to say is probably the most important. Next slide, please. It's the key contact and advisor section. And here's where you're going to put all your information that's really important to you. I like to say that this is your database of people in your life that are really, really important. So it's going to have a section where you can put your financial advisor's information. You could put your estate planner's information. You could put your financial professional's information, your attorney. I like to put key people in my life in there. If anything happens to me and my wife and we're together, who do they call? Who takes care of my kids? My brother Mark is in there. All his information's in there. In addition to that, you can put all your medical information there, your doctor's information, pharmacies that you might have. And we also have a lot of digital passwords. There's a password section on page 3 or 4 of this brochure. I mean, look at all those passwords that we have. I always like to tell people, you have millions and millions of passwords in your life right now. How do you keep track of all the passwords that are in your life? Do you have them all written down in one spot? Here's a place where you can write them down all in one spot. I do recommend this. If you're going to put passwords in there and you're going to put information that changes regularly, I recommend that you fill it out in pencil if you're going to use the hard copy brochure. If you're going to use the digital brochure, it's easy. We have a digital brochure. It's easy. What you do is every month you save it on your hard drive and you go in there and you update any passwords that you need. And then you can take that brochure, print it out, and put it somewhere safe. And then when passwords update, we usually do it every year. We go through and update the brochure annually. We'll just delete the old one, throw it out, put it in a paper shredder, update the new digital brochure, print it out, and keep it somewhere safe. And it's an easy way for you to keep on updating your brochure. Once you have the core information in there, the update part is really easy. It takes about an hour once a year to go through and make sure your passwords are up to date. Here's an important note. If anyone says, hey, I don't know where my passwords are, I don't even remember what my Netflix password is, or my American Express password, or the password to my Patelco account, inside your iPhone, if you want to take a little bit of time and just pull up your iPhone real quick, I'll walk you through where you can find all of your passwords from all the apps that are inside of your iPhone. If you take your iPhone and you go to the settings menu, And once you're in the settings menu, scroll down halfway down. There's going to be a little tab that says passwords, and you can click on that instead of face recognition. So then you can go in there and you can actually see all your passwords that are written in there. So you have them in your iPhone, and you can also keep them documented over here. Next slide, please. Okay. The next spot is the Financial Information Asset Center. I always recommend that we meet with a financial advisor and we do a financial plan. I think it's the best way for you to just keep your financial life in order. But that's a financial plan, and the Share Your Love brochure goes a little bit deeper. It talks about financial accounts, assets, and liabilities. The first section of the brochure is all your investment accounts. Note, most people in Northern California, average person in Northern California, changes jobs every 2.5 years. Average person in Northern California has anywhere from 2 to 3 401ks with previous employers that they've never consolidated. This is a great time to write down where all of your 401k assets are. It also gives you an opportunity to sit down with your financial advisor and say, hey, I worked at company XYZ 10 years ago, and I noticed that I had a small 401k over there. Can I roll it over into an IRA at Patelco, or roll it in and consolidate all those assets? Yes, you could. This is where you're going to list all your investment accounts, all your bank accounts, all your personal property. A lot of people in Northern California hold multiple properties. Rental property is very popular. We have a great real estate market in Northern California. For some reason, it just keeps on going up, and we enjoy that. We love that. And this is a list where you can list all your properties. Also your liabilities. Just because you're disabled and you might not be able to pay your bills doesn't mean that the bills don't stop coming in. Okay, so if anything should happen to you, you do have a list of all the obligations, liabilities, and debt that you owe on a monthly basis. I like to put all the credit card information in here. I like to list my 2 or 3 credit cards that we have and make sure that we have passwords next to them. So if anything happens, people can get online and pay those credit card bills for us. So we have all the information on there. Next line, please. Insurance policies and other benefits is a separate section inside of the brochure. If you don't have insurance policies, you don't have to fill this section out, but there are people out there that have term policies, disability policies, life insurance, whole life policies, medical benefits for your clients. This is a great place where you can add your fiduciaries on there as well, and also put your beneficiaries. If you're on the brochure and you turn to that slide, the best part about the brochure is this. Not only does it have a spot where you list the individual policies that you have, but it has a space for a column where you're going to put the policy number. You're going to put the location of the physical policy. Where do you keep it? Do you keep it in a filing cabinet? Is it in a safety deposit box? Where is the physical policy? And I always also like to put the number of the insurance company. So if anything should happen to you, and it's a life insurance policy, life insurance pays fairly quickly. My father passed away. We got the life insurance policy within a couple of weeks, and it was able to help us to pay for the funeral. But it came quick, and customer service numbers are really important. So at this time, if you do need a copy of if someone passes away and you do need that information, you have all the assets and a way for you to gather the assets all in one spot. Also, there's a spot for employer benefits and military benefits as well. Right? All the different types of military benefits and government benefits are also listed here. My father was a school teacher. When he had passed away, we had to call the benefits department because my mother received a different pension than he did. So you're also working with Social Security at that time. You're working with any pensions that might be available. And this is also the time that you're going to have to close out any accounts that might be open. So you just want to have all that information listed for all the different policies and benefits that you have. Next slide, please. So when you put together an estate plan, there's a couple of parts of the estate plan that are really, really important. Okay, it's the documents and information that you're going to need. An estate plan is usually based on a will, a living trust, power of attorney. Right inside the brochure, you can list where you put that estate plan. You're also going to put any deeds and titles on there. I like to list family forms inside of the brochure. So what we do in our family is, and we're super organized when it comes to the important papers in our life. Inside of our safety deposit box, every family member in my family has a little clear envelope. And inside that envelope, what we keep in our envelopes is we keep birth certificates, marriage papers, any kind of important papers, and we label it with that person's name on there. And then what we do is inside the Share Your Love discussion guide, we say, okay, all the family forms, they're inside the safety deposit box. Makes it really easy if anyone should know. Especially, this is also important. I don't know if anyone out there has young kids, but we have 2 little girls. Carly's 9 and Reagan's 5, like I mentioned before. And when they were born, they asked me if we wanted to do cord blood, which is where you can actually take the stem cells and save them. Well, if anything happens to my wife and I, how do my beneficiaries know that our daughters have cord blood down the road if anything happens? We list it in there. So everyone's different. Everyone has things that are important, and we list our important facts in there. This is also a place where you can put all your business documents, tax returns, monthly budgets, and expenses. Next slide, please. So estate plan, there's a lot of different moving parts to an estate plan. And the most important parts of an estate plan, the most important documents that you're going to use are the will, the personal property disposal list, the living will, medical power of attorney, the durable power of attorney, and the ethical will. So this part of the presentation, as I said, we're not estate planners, but it's here to design, to give you a couple of ideas that when you do meet with your estate planner, you can ask them those educated questions. And if you don't have an estate plan, one of the benefits of working with Patelco is they have a great group of financial advisors that have connections throughout the areas that they work in many different towns. A lot of your financial advisors probably know an estate planner that they can work with and help you with and direct you to people that can help you and give you a qualified referral. Next slide, please. Okay. What is a will? Your will is basically a legal document that designates an executor to direct assets, how they should be distributed if you to pass away. In the last year, not only did I lose my father, but a year ago, I also lost my aunt, who was a very important person to me. She was like a second mother, and she chose me to be the executor of her will. And it wasn't a large estate. She was a teacher, had assets, had multiple homes, right? But it wasn't a huge, multi-million-dollar estate. And everyone thinks that they need to have a will or an estate plan if you're wealthy, and that's not true. My aunt had a couple of homes in New Jersey. They were rentals. In New Jersey, housing prices aren't as high as they are in California, but she did have a pension. She had a small 403b, and she had some assets that she wanted to pass on to my mother and her brother, who's my uncle. And I was in charge of being the executor of the estate. And what it was it was a great lesson for me because it taught me the process of settling an estate. If you're an executor, you were an executor before, you know how lengthy that process is of settling an estate. The will is where you're going to name your executor, right? And it guarantees that your wishes are carried out regarding your estate, right? It's going to minimize family conflict. My job as the executor was to really help navigate and distribute assets according to my aunt's wishes to make sure that my aunt and my mother didn't fight over those assets. And they didn't. They were very civil, but I could see where if there's multiple parties involved and there's a lot of money involved, this could get really messy. It's also there to provide guardianship for minor children. My wife, Jamie, said, I'll never forget after we had our first daughter, Carly, and we were going to go on vacation. It was the first vacation we took alone. She said, I'm not going on vacation unless we have a will. She goes, I want to make sure that someone's looking after our daughter if something happens to us. In addition to that, it's going to help you avoid lengthy probate process. It's going to minimize estate tax. And here's where you can also designate if you want to make donations and gifts when you pass away. Next slide, please. The personal property list. I'm sure everyone out there has family heirlooms that they want to pass on. Maybe it's something that came from great-great-grandma. Maybe it's something that came from a parent or a loved one. Maybe it's something that's been in your family forever. I always make the joke that we go back to the East Coast every year to celebrate Christmas with our family, and we're Italian. We have this big Christmas feast with everyone for Christmas Eve. And my mom breaks out the Christmas china, and she always says, one day, Frank, you and your brother are going to get the Christmas china. And I say, well, hopefully we don't get it too soon. We don't want that Christmas china too soon. But this is where you would list it. Some people have pianos, watches, jewelries. We want to pass assets on to our loved ones And this is where you can write all the things down that go to individuals and the value of it. Next slide, please. The next part is the living will. Living will is really important. And this is something that we went through with my father. And I will say this. The reason why you do a living will and make a living will is because you never want your loved ones to have to make that decision. It's a horrible place to be. It's an emotional roller coaster. And luckily, my father did not put us in the position to make that decision. It's a written statement expressing your desire regarding medical treatment if you are no longer to express informed consent. It takes the burden off your family. It guarantees that the decision is yours. Next slide, please. The next slide is the medical power of attorney. It grants someone the power to make medical decisions. For you, if you have become incapacitated, there's times when we are incapacitated. You're going to pull through, but at the same time, you can't, and you're not conscious enough to make your own medical directives at that time. So it's always based on this. It covers medical conditions and treatments such as pain relief, the owner donation, and it specifies your wishes. Next slide, please. The next is the durable power of attorney. It gives authority to a trusted loved one or family member to manage your assets if you are unable to do so. And I mentioned this before, you might be incapacitated, you might be on the mend in hospital, getting better. Who's in charge of paying your finances? Do you have a trusted loved one that's going to be able to pay your bills while you're in the hospital? This is where you give someone the power. This can help manage bank accounts, filing tax returns, and also apply for government benefits if you can. For example, disability benefits. Without this documents, loved ones would have to go to court and wouldn't be able to handle your finances until it was settled. Next slide, please. Arrangements. Like I said, I lost 2 loved family members in the last year and a half, and it was an emotional roller coaster. And what I hate doing and what I hated to do was plan funerals. It was a lot of work, and I'm going to urge everyone in this call that if you can plan your own funeral ahead of time, do so. Do the planning ahead of time. It's great. We planned, my wife and I planned our funerals. We have everything going. We put everything in place. And I'll tell you what, they give you a discount. A lot of times if you prepay, they'll give you a discount. But you could talk about owner donation. You could pick the funeral home, the cemetery, pick your obituary or tombstone, the plaque, and involve it. My father passed away back in February, and we still don't have a tombstone. It's on the way. But it's one of those things where you can have everything taken care of. And at the time of a loved one passing, you don't have to make all these decisions. You're not rushing around and looking for funds and paying off people, and it's all done for you. It makes it easy, and the planning is all done. So that's an important consideration to plan your own funeral ahead of time. A lot of people are doing it now. Next slide, please. Okay, once you're done with the brochure and you filled out all the important parts, one of the most important things in the brochure is the last part. It's the ethical and family history, and it's a place for you to define your legacy. So think about this for a minute. You've taken the time to fill out this brochure, and you have loved ones, and you tell your loved ones where this brochure is, and if anything should happen to me, you know exactly where all the important documents are. You're well taken care of. You know who our financial advisor is. We have an estate plan. We've checked off all the boxes. And in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you pass away, and your loved ones take this brochure and they turn to the end. And at the end of the brochure, there's the last thing that they're going to hear from you. It's a spot where Equitable ties in and defines your legacy. And I'm very proud of this brochure because some of the questions in there are, the most important thing I've done in my life is, I'm most appreciative for, and my joys were. And this is one last time for you to talk to your family and tell them something that's very important, right? It's how do you want your family to remember you? It's an opportunity to tell your story and pass on your values. And through that, your family gets to hear exactly how you feel one more time. Next slide, please. So we always talk about, what do you do with the brochure after completion? Where do we put it? You know, it's a big brochure. Every time I do this presentation, a client asks, Frank, there's so much personal information in there. What if I lose it? What happens? And I always say, you know what? That's part of the process. Make sure you put the brochure somewhere safe where people aren't going to find it, but only a few people know where it is. Discuss the contents of the brochure with the loved ones, right? Attach a copy, give a copy to someone if you feel that's needed. If not, just tell them where it is and have that physical copy somewhere locked up safe. It does have passwords in it. It does have a lot of information in there. But it's important to know this. The Share Your Love discussion guide is not a legal document. It's not going to hold up in court. Just because you filled out the Share Your Love discussion guide doesn't mean that that's set in stone. It's not notarized. So in order to make sure that your wishes are passed out, you really do need to meet with an estate planner to go through all the proper legal documents of executing that estate plan. Next slide, please. At this time, we're going to open up for some questions and answers. I'm going to let Chris take over. If you have any questions, please enter them in the chat or the question and answer section. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Frank. Such valuable information. Let's go to the Q&A, as you said. I'll take the first one. The question is, does Patelco have financial advisors? Yes, we do. We'll go to a slide where there'll be information about our financial advisors here shortly. So take that one. The second one, Frank, I'll turn it over to you. You may have already covered this, but what is the difference between a living will and a living trust?
Yeah, for the detailed information now, we're going to say that you have to talk to your estate planner. There's some fine details that go over the difference. We shouldn't be discussing that at this point just because I'm not a certified estate planner and can go into the details.
Second question, can you recommend fiduciaries that can act in the role of executor or POA for those of us who don't have children?
No, my aunt, I'll tell you, this is a true story. So my aunt had no kids, never married, and she chose me to be her executor. So, and we were very, very close. We grew up together, did a lot together. I believe that your executor is a trusted loved one. And it could be anyone. It could be a child. It could be a brother, a sister. It could be a trusted loved one. Anyone that you feel is a trusted friend or family that can act on your behalf. I would say that's probably the best person to put as an executor.
Perfect. This one you sort of alluded to on the last slide. Where is a safe place to keep completed guide with confidential information, estate documents, as we don't have safe deposit boxes here?
Yeah, well, I will tell you somewhere not to put them. So I did this presentation one time with a financial advisor, and a woman stood up and spoke at the meeting and said, you know, this financial advisor was my financial advisor for 30 years. He was there when I got married. He was there when we bought our house, and he helped me put my kids through college. And my husband said, if anything ever happens to me, take the drawer in the dining room and bring it to the financial advisor. And she did. She took the whole drawer out and she brought it to the financial advisor. And it took him 3 months to look through all the financial documents. And the joke is that that's what we're trying to avoid, right? So a safe place could be a home safe. It could be somewhere tucked away safe. It could be a fireproof box that you might have screwed to the bottom of the floor or wherever. But anywhere safe is where you want to put this. It can even be, if you don't feel like putting it in a safe place physically, what about a hard drive? If you're tech savvy, what about a hard drive that's password encrypted, and you put that in the living room drawer and you just leave it there, and your loved ones have the password to that hard drive, and then it's encrypted. They can't get in unless they have the encrypted code.
All right, next one, we have a couple more, Frank. I have minor children. If I want to designate a caregiver, would I list that person in the estate plan?
I think you should. That's what we did. My brother Mark is the caregiver for our kids, Carly and Reagan. So if anything happens to my wife and I at the same time, he's going to be in charge of taking care of them.
All right, next one is, do you recommend use of a password manager such as LastPass or something like that?
If it makes you feel comfortable, of course, absolutely. We don't use one for ours, but we have a different process. You know, we have a safety deposit box that we keep it in. But if passwords makes you feel comfortable, absolutely. I think that security is based on the individual. What makes you feel comfortable and what makes you feel safe with your private information is the route that you should go.
Next one, if you don't have family or friends who can act as a fiduciary, how do you find a good professional fiduciary? What should you look for?
I know that some financial service region have services that you can have that execute on the behalf of you. I would to bring that to an estate planner. I think that's the best thing to be, because a certified estate planner might have services that can act as a fiduciary for you.
Good. This next one I'll take. It's a couple have asked this question. Is there a fee for working with a financial advisor? We offer a no cost, no obligation initial consultation with our Patelco financial advisors, and there'll be more information in a couple of slides on how to get in touch with one. Let's see if we have one more here before we move on. One other question is, does Patelco have estate planners? We do work with estate planning attorney partner. That person was the presenter and speaker in our estate planning part 1. So you just visit our website and then you can see and listen to the recording for that presentation and get the information. Let's see, one more before we move on here, a couple more. You mentioned 401ks and 403bs. Can they be transferred if it's set up as an annuity?
I think that's a great question to ask the financial advisor that you work with. But I will say this, yes, absolutely. 403bs, 401ks could be rolled into IRAs. But I would talk to your financial advisor, because they're going to tell you the best way to consolidate those assets.
Okay. Funeral planning. What if I move to a different state?
If you move to a different state, that would be a change that you'd have to make.
All right, let me see if we have any other ones. Do you have software app suggestions to record most of the information if you don't use the brochure?
I don't, but we use the brochure at Equitable. The Equitable is the best place to record all the information. There's probably other, if you talk to an estate planner, he probably has his own software that he might want to use. If you talk to a financial advisor, a lot of the times these firms have aggregate software where you can, on a website, you could pull in all your different accounts and see everything in one place. I think one of the softwares that's popular out there might be, Chris, is it eMoney? What's the one that is currently used at Patelco? Do you know?
Money Guide Pro.
Money Guide Pro is an excellent software. Meet with your financial advisor, ask them to use Money Guide Pro. It's amazing software to use to consolidate all your assets and have everything in one place.
All right, a couple of questions I'll take just consolidate. We will, if you email me, and I'll have my email address at the end of the presentation, we can refer you to a estate planning attorney. So definitely do that. Stay till the end and look at the slides, and then take a picture of my contact information and then email me, and then we'll put you in touch with a estate planning attorney. All right. That's all the Q&A for now. Next slide. At the start of the webinar, we talked about a digital estate planning solution for the do-it-yourselfers. If that interests you, here's the information. 100% online with easy step-by-step instructions. Expert help is available by chat, email, or phone. It's built by attorneys and customized by you to fit your needs. Complete in as little as 30 minutes. And right now, save 25% off an estate plan. That's $374 for a trust after the 25% off, and $149 for a will after 25% off. Just go to trustandwill.com/Patelco. We will drop a link into the chat to find the page on patelco.org, and we'll move from there. Next slide. As Frank mentioned throughout the presentation, most people will need advice when investing. We have 10 financial advisors here at Patelco available to help you make those decisions. They're actually employees of Patelco. They can help you with tax-free income, retirement planning and retirement income, 401k and IRA rollovers, financial planning, life insurance, long-term care, and wealth transfer. They're available to meet with you in person, in one of our local branches, over the telephone, and via Zoom. Our financial advisors have an encrypted version of Zoom for added online protection. I'll drop a link in the chat to help you locate a financial advisor assigned to your local branch to set up an appointment. As I said, we do have 10 financial advisors, and they're spread all across our 39 branch network. Or contact me directly, either by phone or email, and we will get you to a financial advisor in your area. If you contact me directly, please know what branch is the most convenient for you. And now let's talk about the promotion. Next slide. It's simple. Through December 31st, you can get a $100 Amazon e-card when you invest $25,000 or more with us. I said something incorrect earlier in the presentation. I said $250,000 is actually $25,000 or more with us. So click on those links in the chat to get an appointment scheduled. Lastly, on behalf of Frank, myself, and the entire Patelco team, we thank you for attending tonight's webinar, and please check our website and join us for future webinars. And remember, wherever you are on your financial journey, Patelco is here for you. Thank you and good night.
Thanks for watching. You want more financial education? Well, make sure you just hit the next video here. And how about joining us so that we can continually give you good financial support? Hit the subscribe button because we want you here.